Jackal exploded off the front lines and onto your NES back in 1988. Developed and published by Konami, Jackal for the NES was based on the quarter-crunching arcade game of the same name that was released into arcades a couple years prior, back in 1986. The arcade version of Jackal saw you advancing into enemy territory to save POWs that were captured by an unnamed army, and only a couple of guys piloting a super-powered Jeep could bring them home. Jackal in the arcades was definitely a ton of fun, but was unfortunately overshadowed by other heavy-hitting games of the time, so it never seemed to gain the popularity of other, more successful Konami-developed arcade games. Thankfully, that didn't stop Konami from bringing Jackal home to the NES and giving fans a chance to play it without having to beg their parents for more quarters. But was Jackal on the NES a good enough port to make fans and newcomers alike keep coming back for more hardcore Jeep action? Or was Jackal just a lost cause at this point, destined to take a backseat to Konami's more successful franchises? Well, buckle up into your favorite top-secret military Jeep, because we're about to see if Jackal on the NES can make your blood boil. Start up Jackal and you're treated to a brief opening cinematic that explains why anyone would be crazy enough to strap themselves into a Jeep and then attempt to plow through an entire enemy army with it. Essentially, it's up to you and your fellow Green Berets to lead a covert mission into enemy territory to save lost POWs, and the only way you can do that is with an experimental Jeep and a crew made up of race car drivers and stuntmen that are all apparently insane enough to think that this is a good idea. Once you're done with the story, go ahead and press start to get a quick overview of the area map, and then get ready to do your country proud by blowing up some other country with a Jeep. Get into the game and you're met with an overhead view of the action. You of course control that all-important super experimental Jeep, which just kind of looks like a regular Jeep to me, but hey, whatever. With the objective being to make your way through the level, save some POWs, fight a boss, and then rinse and repeat for the next level. Obviously, Jackal is a fairly simple overhead shooter, but it does do some interesting things to keep you on your toes. For one, even though this is some super crazy future military Jeep that's being piloted by the best of the best that the Green Berets have to offer, apparently no one knows how to shoot in any direction but straight forward. Yes, your main weapon will only ever target anything directly in front of you, which makes positioning your Jeep extremely important as you make your way through each level, especially since only one hit from anything in the game will take your so-called Super Jeep down. Thankfully, you do get a little help with your secondary weapon, which can be fired off in any direction that you can point the Jeep in. This is actually the weapon you'll probably end up using the most in the game, since not only can it take down just about every enemy in the game with one hit, it can also be powered up into a super bazooka that turns you into a one Jeep wrecking crew. Unfortunately, that's about all the help you'll get to make your way through the enemy ranks, besides just occasionally using your Jeep to run over enemy soldiers, which is always satisfying if you happen to get blown up and lose your super awesome powered up bazooka. Besides just running and gunning, or I guess driving and gunning, through each stage, you're also tasked with saving POWs that are being held in various buildings in each map. If you find one, just chuck a grenade or missile at it and then collect the prisoners that run out. Collecting these little guys is how you go about powering up your secondary weapon, along with giving you a ton of points for those all-important extra lives. Toward the end of each stage, you'll see a white helicopter fly from the bottom of the screen, indicating that you're getting close to the helipad where you can drop those POWs off at. Usually these helipads are super well defended, so you'll need to take your time clearing out enemies before you can drop them off, since it totally sucks to get killed right at the helipad and lose most of the POWs that you've collected. You can at least pick up a few after you respawn, but the rest of the POWs that you collected have been blown to bits. You don't really need to collect the POWs if you don't want to, since there's no real penalty for not rescuing them. But getting your secondary gun up to its max level definitely makes the game way easier, so it's worth it to grab the POWs when you see them. Plus, I mean, they're POWs. How could you even sleep at night knowing you just passed them by? Once you drop off the POWs, the stage boss is usually just around the corner, and most are generally easy to deal with. None really offer up much challenge besides just dodging what they shoot at you, so it's more of an issue of just maneuvering your Jeep around them so you can get to where you can hit them. Beat the boss, and then it's on to the next stage to continue your Jeep rampage. Thankfully, the 6 stages that you'll be doing this in all have a decent amount of variety to keep the action from getting dull, and there's usually always a new obstacle or enemy to keep you on your toes just when you think you've got things down. Jackal isn't exactly the hardest or longest of NES games, but it's one of those games that's always fun to come back to on repeat playthroughs, especially if you got a friend around, and then the game gets even better with an awesome 2-player co-op mode. And even without a friend, there's still a lot of fun to be had here thanks to the variety and razor-sharp shoot-'em-up gameplay throughout. All said, Jackal for the NES is yet another all-time classic Konami game that ended up outdoing its bigger arcade brother in just about every way. While the arcade version of Jackal could never quite reach the heights of popularity it may have deserved, at least the NES version will always be remembered fondly by its many fans. On a personal note, I somehow never actually played Jackal as a kid. I honestly couldn't tell you why, since this is definitely the type of game I actively hunted down when I was scouring the rental store shelves looking for something me and my cousin could play over the weekend. And yeah, I'm sure Jackal would have easily been an all-time favorite with us had I picked it up. Unfortunately though, for whatever reason, I never played Jackal until way later in life, only to see what I missed out on in retrospect. Still, playing it today is, well, it's still just as fun as I'm sure it was back then. And Jackal is definitely one of those games that should be in heavy rotation for any NES fan looking to still have fun with the best that system has to offer. So if you've somehow missed out on Jackal for the NES up to this point, then do yourself a favor and grab it if you get the chance. It may not make your blood boil, but Jackal is still a game totally worth heading into enemy territory for.